Idumota Market. Eko Idumota, once a residential neighborhood, is home to Idumota Market located on Lagos Island. It is one of the oldest and arguably one of the largest markets in West Africa. Idumota is a historic neighborhood adjacent to the Lagos port that facilitated the slave trade, and later, under the British indirect rule, it surrounded to exports that fueled the colonial enterprise. Idumota was also the location of an armed forces remembrance cenotaph called Soja Idumota, built as a monument to Nigerian soldiers who served with the West African Frontier Force. An Eyo masquerade statue and a clock tower are also some monuments at Idumota. Idumota Market is so popular that large sales are recorded as early as 7 a.m. The market is made up of hundreds of locked-up shops occupying several multi-story buildings, with some measuring about 5 or more floors. In 2010, the Lagos State government demolished some illegal structures in order to improve vehicular and human movement in and around the markets. During weekdays, the neighborhood of Idumota is densely populated by shoppers, traders, and bus passengers. From the Carter Bridge, ascending into Lagos Island, passengers can see the neighborhood before disembarking at their final destination. Idumota Market accommodates the substantial inflow of imported goods. The bulk of import from abroad are routed first through Idumota and then on to other markets through Nigeria and other West and Central African countries. The energy of private Idumota traders and wholesalers facilitate this activity, where millions of US dollars worth of wholesale is exchanged daily. Idumota Market, SOUQ Enlightenment.
I'm okay.
My name is Raymond Bola Brown.
Hi, my name is Fred Amata, and you are on to SOUQ News.
If you are watching this channel for the first time, make sure you continue to watch it, because this is SOUQ News.
Shout out to SOUQ News. Actually, I don't know. I really enjoyed the little moment I spent with you, and I think with more of this.
SOUQ News. Here's the SOUQ News, who had the courage to transcend a locked-off camera and actually have a conversation with a human being. It's a pleasure, SOUQ News. Thank you very much.
Tafawa Balewa Square, TBS. Tafawa Balewa Square was initially used as a horsing ground called Lagos Race Course. The edifice was constructed by General Yakubu Gowon in 1972 and named after Nigeria's first Prime Minister, Sir Tafawa Balewa. Tafawa Balewa Square is located at 45/57 Marse Bangboshe Street on Lagos Island, Lagos, and referred to as TBS. TBS is a 50,000-seater capacity venue and houses the Remembrance Arcade, the 26-story Independence House, which at a time was the country's tallest building. When Lagos served as the country's seat of government, the National Assembly Complex was within the TBS. Also in the square are the National Broadcasting Commission Office, the Nigerian Hydrological Services Agency Office, shopping centers, travel agencies, restaurants, car parking lots, and a bus terminal. Tafawa Balewa Square is adorned with beautiful statues of white horses and red eagles, symbols of strength and dignity. Our historic neighbors include the King's College and the Holy Cross Cathedral. Tafawa Balewa Square hosted some of the country's memorable events, such as the Independence Day in 1960, when Nigeria gained independence from Britain, the Armed Forces Remembrance Day, which is celebrated annually on January 15. The edifice is a national cultural asset. Tafawa Balewa Square, SOUQ Enlightenment.
My name is Dr. Rafiu Oladipo.
My name is Baba Jalal Repega.
I'm Reverend Juliet Benite.
I'm Godi Odidi.
My name is Professor Oladokun Sulaiman Olarawaju.
SOUQ News is on the ground, loading.
Very enlightening, very educative, and entertaining.
Thank you to SOUQ News.
So I'm happy that SOUQ TV has come into existence.
I'm happy to be here in the SOUQ News.
I want to encourage you to subscribe to the channel and keep watching news that makes sense.
As Browning said, one's extension of one's reach should not exceed one's grasp, or what is heaven for. And I think SOUQ News is doing that.
Africa needs a voice of truth, and SOUQ News has become one of them. And get ready, get ready, get ready.
And keep watching.
Keep watching SOUQ News.
Keep watching SOUQ News. It's a place to be.
Keep watching SOUQ News.
Broad Street. Broad Street, situated in Lagos Island, is steeped in Nigerian history. Once the biggest financial hub of the country, it housed the headquarters of major banks, linked the CBN, the stock exchange, and the loads of lender companies. Broad Street is a historically significant street. It has played a central role in the development of Lagos and history, an important commercial and administrative center for the British colonial authorities. It was also a home to some of the city's earliest modern buildings. Broad Street was a residential area in the pre-colonial era. With the British came the Methodist Boys High School in 1878 and the Broad Street Prison in 1882, renamed Freedom Park. The General Hospital, which was a British military hospital, was built in 1893, being the first general hospital in Nigeria. The old British Secretariat building, which is now the Federal Ministry of Justice, was built in 1906. Broad Street has seen a full turn into modern commercial office blocks, complexes, skyscrapers, and markets from the outer marina through Akpombo, early into the Adeniji Adele Road. Broad Street is one of the busiest streets in Nigeria on weekdays, where commercial activities take place day and night. From modern buildings to ancient structures, this street gives one a raw dose of life in Lagos. Broad Street is often referred to as Lagos Financial District. It boasts a mix of architectural styles, reflecting its long history, colonial-era buildings, Victorian and Edwardian architectural features, alongside more modern skyscrapers and structures. Broad Street remains a vital, vibrant part of the Nigerian economy. Broad Street. SOUQ Enlightenment.
I'm okay.
My name is Raymond Bola Brown.
Hi, my name is Fred Amata, and you are on to SOUQ News.
If you are watching this channel for the first time, make sure you continue to watch it because this is SOUQ News.
Shout out to SOUQ News. Actually, I don't know. I really enjoyed the little moment I spent with you, and I think with more of this.
SOUQ News. Here's the SOUQ News, who had the courage to transcend a locked-off camera and actually have a conversation with a human being. It's a pleasure, SOUQ News. Thank you very much.
Idumota Market. Eko Idumota, once a residential neighborhood, is home to Idumota Market located on Lagos Island. It is one of the oldest and arguably one of the largest markets in West Africa. Idumota is a historic neighborhood adjacent to the Lagos port that facilitated the slave trade, and later under the British indirect rule, it surrounded to exports that fueled the colonial enterprise. Idumota was also the location of an armed forces remembrance cenotaph called Soja Idumota, built as a monument to Nigerian soldiers who served with the West African Frontier Force. An Eyo Masquerade statue and a clock tower are also some monuments at Idumota. Idumota Market is so popular that large sales are recorded as early as 7 a.m. The market is made up of hundreds of locked-up shops occupying several multi-story buildings, with some measuring about 5 or more floors. In 2010, the Lagos State government demolished some illegal structures in order to improve vehicular and human movement in and around the markets. During weekdays, the neighborhood of Idumota is densely populated by shoppers, traders, and bus passengers. From the Carter Bridge ascending into Lagos Island, passengers can see the neighborhood before disembarking at their final destination. Idumota Market accommodates the substantial inflow of imported goods. The bulk of import from abroad are routed first through Idumota and then on to other markets through Nigeria and other West and Central African countries. The energy of private Idumota traders and wholesalers facilitate this activity, where millions of US dollars worth of wholesale is exchanged daily. Idumota Markets, SOUQ Enlightenment.
Enjoying the show, and we're looking at you being part of our show and making sure that this conversation does not just stop at this place. So hey, join us on all our social media handles. That's where we're starting from, and join the conversation. My name is John Rogers Chooks, and remember, on SOUQ Pulse we get to look at policies both from international organizations, donor agencies, and that of the government. We see how does it affect the country, how does it affect the businesses, what is the pulse of activities that are happening. How are businesses thriving? How are businesses doing? How are individuals being part of these businesses? And are they really thriving? We get to look at what countries are doing. Are they really on the track for progress? These are things we look at on SOUQ Pulse, and we sit and discuss, we talk about it. And at the end of the day, we tell ourselves some basic truths. We are going on a break, and when we return, SOUQ Pulse will be right back. Don't go anywhere.
My name is Olatunji Shoti Miri. I'm a performing artist and television radio presenter and a university lecturer, UNILAG. Keep watching SOUQ News.
Hello everyone, my name is Kenny Black, Africa's finest music comedian, and you're watching SOUQ News. If you're not watching SOUQ News, I pity you, but keep watching SOUQ News.
Hello everyone, my name is Timmy Dakolo, and you're watching SOUQ News. Stay tuned.
Hi, my name is Wisdom Oluwaseun Okoko, co-founder Orbit Africa Properties. I'm live at SOUQ News. Guys, keep watching SOUQ News for everything that concerns business, economy, politics, news. SOUQ News is your station.
My name is Dr. Rafiu Oladipo.
My name is Baba Jalal Repega.
I'm Reverend Juliet Benite.
I'm Godio Didi.
My name is Professor Oladokun Sulaiman Olarawaju.
SOUQ News is on the ground, loading.
Very enlightening, very educative, and entertaining.
Thank you to SOUQ News.
So I'm happy that SOUQ TV has come into existence.
I'm happy to be here in the SOUQ News.
I want to encourage you to subscribe to the channel and keep watching news that makes sense.
As Browning said, one's extension of one's reach should not exceed one's grasp, or what is heaven for. And I think SOUQ News is doing that.
Africa needs a voice of truth, and SOUQ News has become one of them. And get ready, get ready, get ready.
And keep watching.
Keep watching SOUQ News.
Keep watching SOUQ News. It's a place to be.
Yes, welcome back to SOUQ Pulse. Today we are looking at Asian policies. We're looking at recent Asian policies as it affects the real estate industry, and we are focusing on China. What is the impact of the recent policy on real estate in China? We'll put it side by side with what is happening in Africa and ask ourselves, is this positive? If it's yes, how can we learn from this? We look at several indices that are affecting not just the real estate in Africa, but also the housing policy. Are we on the right track? But first, let's look at what is happening in China. Over the last 4 years, right from 2020, we had a crisis, we had a real estate crisis in China, to be precise. Then major real estate organizations went down. And there was a lot of debt that was incurred in that particular sector. The Chinese government had a policy not just to salvage the industry, but to see that those particular debts don't build. You remember the story of Evergrande. We remember how much they owed. They owed at a particular point in time over 300 billion. That is just one single company. But at the end of the day, we knew that that particular industry kept going down. And sometime in January, end of January to be precise, last week, the Chinese decided that it's time to look into this particular industry. And they told the banks, to be precise, you can reduce the amount of reserve that you have, which has not been done since 2021, and be able to lend to real estate industries. They were very specific. The People's Bank of China said you can lend to them. And they now told the industry giants and everybody operating in that particular development space, you can borrow to pay your debts. You can borrow to expand on your project. You can borrow as long as that project is visible, supervised, and profitable. You can borrow and go ahead and get them done. Now, this particular policy has a very funny bit to it. Now, unlike before, they will post policies on the net and you go ahead and read it and get to see about it. But on this particular one, the head of the bank had to come out with the premier and directly voice it, televise it to the people, which means that they mean business. For those that are not sure, the Chinese real estate company, the Chinese real estate industry is the first in the world. Yes, you heard me. Yes, it used to be the US, but right now that particular industry is the first. And there is a projection that is expected to get to $135.7 trillion by 2024. So you see a people that are intentional in growing an industry. Now, sometime in 2020, it's when the crisis was on, there were a lot of reports, although not that much verified. Yes, it was in millions, but there was a lot of reports that a lot of homes have been paid for in tens of millions, some suggesting up to 20, which was not confirmed. But these homes have not been delivered. But as we speak right now, they have put up a policy and things have started to show up. I'm not just here to talk about this. We have an in-house analyst, a special at it, our own very own, Mr. Sam Oruboje. Sir, you're welcome.
A pleasure, Chooks.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Now, we are looking at this policy that was released towards the end of January. And to them, they were very specific, which is normal worldwide. They said once the real estate industry is growing and moving, it affects major other industries across board in every nation. And if we can get this industry going, then it tells us that the country can also be on the path of growth. So this, here we say, in Africa we say pumping money. No, now they are not pumping money. They're just telling you, okay, now there is funds to access. Unlike before when they tightened. Now they've loosened up and telling this industry, if you are on the path of progress, there is funds to access. And they made it as a policy. First, let's ask, are they on the right track? Knowing very well that this industry has been owing a whole lot.
Yes, I think, in my view, I think that they're on the right track. President Xi Jinping, when he came into power some few years back, has a deliberate policy that the Chinese people, to a very large extent, will be moved away from the level of poverty that they were to bring people out of poverty to a certain level. So when there was a glut in that industry and the challenge they went through, the government have a responsibility, as it were, to find a way to sanitize that industry that was very critical to other development sectors. So housing is critical, and they had to make it compulsory in the financial, particularly the mortgage institutions, to find a way to get money from bank at regulated rates so that people can have more housing in that regard. To that extent, therefore, I think is the right direction. But the question that we should be asking is, to what extent can we take lessons in Africa and in Nigeria in particular for some of those initiatives that the Chinese government has undertaken in recent years to find a way to salvage the real estate sector?
Okay, before we start taking lessons, let me get to quote him. In his own words, he said, "For projects that are difficult but whose funds can be balanced, we should not blindly withdraw loans, suppress loans, or cut off loans." He was very, very specific. No matter how bad the loans are, but as long as this project can be done, the banks should not withhold the loans, suppress it. They must. And he went ahead to say that even the loans they are taking, they can use the loans to offset their debt.
Yes, that's a forward-looking government, or a people-centered government, where a government really think critically about its citizens, and that's like an incentive to that sector, that whatever it takes, you must find a way to deliver value in terms of real estate. I think that is the lesson, in my view, that you have a president that is responsive to the need and aspiration of his citizens.
Okay. Then this, well, before we start, we started with make it very close that the Chinese real estate troubles are closely intertwined with the issues they're having with the local governments. Their local governments work. I'm not saying it's not working here. You can follow that argument differently. But now their local government works. And for real estate developers, how most of the local government, part of where they make money there is when the real estate developers come to develop, it's the local government that sell land to the real estate developers. Now, the money they make off selling the land, they also use for development or whatever their activities are. So over the years, there has been this graph of they are not selling as much land as they were selling before, and the value was dropping. Now, since the industry is not doing well, the local governments also are not doing well. So I don't know if you see the
yes, and that's why the government has taken an initiative that once a sector suffers, it has an implication, a negative implication for other sector. So, for example, the local government councils that used to benefit when they give land to developers, which help the development in terms of the local councils, are equally suffering. So, the Chinese government, take a responsibility that for us to be able to sustain this kind of arrangement between the local council and the estate development and the citizens themselves, there's a need to salvage that industry. And now, as mandated banks, particularly mortgage institutions, to find a way to get money, they must lend to them, even where you are overexposed. There are other repayment arrangements that the government has put in place so that the industry can survive. In the interest of the citizen.
In the interest of the citizen, being the watchword. Yes, the interest. There are a particular amount initially when this policy came out was released in circulation from the central bank, the Chinese People's Bank. Now, they did this it's not like an afterthought. I don't know, it's not like you just wake up and you get something done. Or it's not like maybe they are trying to get re-elected for something or get an opinion poll. They sat and meticulously watched what has happened over the years. Yes, there is a problem. Yes, the industry is suffering. Yet they went ahead to say, okay, good. They are owing, they can't pay. But if we keep starving them of the funds, how can they work? They've gone ahead to say, okay, this is part of our money. Let's put it where our mouth is.
Yes, the point is that once the government is deliberate and there are issues, the government is able to respond to those issues because it has to do with the citizen. So the Chinese Consultative Assembly, if I get that word rightly, have over time studied that scenario, and the president came out with a bold step to salvage that industry. So it's a welcoming decision on the part of the government to salvage the industry, because at the end of the day, if that problem continues, then the local councils will suffer in terms of their development agenda for citizens. Then the Central People's Republic of China government as well will have issues. So I think it's a win-win situation for real estate developers, a win-win situation for local councils, what you call the local government, then the Central People's Government of China will equally benefit in that regard. So from that perspective, I think the government is in sync with the aspiration of these people, because the first responsibility of any government is the welfare and the security of its people.
Okay, now let's bring it home a little bit. But before we get there, a lot of these real estate developers are businessmen. A lot of them are not state-owned businesses. They are individual businesses, be them small, be them big. So people might not understand or think maybe we are looking at government development, government real estate development, or government estates. No, these are individual businesses. And the government is focused on making sure that individual businesses not just prosper, but work. And for those that have almost gone down, they're still giving them leverage to go out there and kickstart the business. Is this the right thing to do? Unlike some other places where you see government say, okay, since your company is going under, we are taking over it.
No, you must make a distinction between China and other democracies. China have what you call a centralized government system with a knack of some democratic values. So you cannot make a direct comparison. The China model of governance is to a very large extent centralized. So when you have a centralized government, the government have a direct control of activities, whether they are public or private sector. Unlike the American models that has a bigger distinction between private sector development and public sector development. So you need to understand that, that core distinction, that there's a centralized process. So they are a bit socialist in outlook, even though a dent of democracy. So that's why they are able to take this kind of bold decision to find a way to salvage that sector, in my view.
Okay. Now let's start gradually bringing this home. China is not just developing real estate, they are building cities that are not occupied yet. Now, let's come home to Africa, where we know is the new bride. Reports from CBN, between 2016 and 2019, we have a housing deficit of 22 million units. Between 2016 and 2019. As of 2023, it was 28 million housing deficit. And most times when people talk about this or when this is discussed, everyone looks at the government. Government should build housing estates. I'm looking at Nigeria now before I start looking at other African countries. Government should build housing estates. Government should build housing estates. Government should provide housing estates. Now you see civil servants. Then the question now is how many are those civil servants to start with? If government should give every civil servant a house or get them a house or get them in policies that will get them a house, will it give a dent in that 28 million? Where should we start looking at the numbers when we say let's develop this sector, the real estate industry?
I think from my own perspective, the first entry point to improve on the housing deficit is financing for housing. We have a very serious challenge when it comes to mortgage financing. We are really lacking in that sector. Once we have a scenario where people can get mortgage from financial services provider, then we'll be able to bridge that gap in the housing sector. Number two, the cost of building is equally worrisome, if not provokingly worrisome.
Hold on, let me interject a bit. When you mention the cost of building, the first thing that comes to mind is the materials we use in building on this side.
Yeah, that's the point I'm trying to speak to.
Over 80% of it is imported.
That's not really the issues. We have local development effort. You have the Nigerian Building Research Agency that has developed some prototype housing models that are cheap, but then when you are in a system where there's no re-mortgage, I remember that I made some contribution into the Federal Mortgage Bank. Some of the years that one has spent working in the private sector. But then, I couldn't access a mortgage. That's a major challenge. So,
but
where people
did they refund?
No refund. Those monies are idle somewhere, and people have been placing demand. And as of date, even those who are in the government system cannot even access some of these mortgage contributions that people made. That's very critical. So elsewhere, you have a mortgage system that gives people an opportunity. Once you have a financial plan that is determined, you are in a paid employment, people can do a financial planning for a 30 to 35 years mortgage repayment, and then you have a house. And when you even have challenge in terms of repayment of those mortgage loan, you have what you call a repayment plan. You restructure your repayment plan to suit your financial challenge at a particular point in time. So that is very critical. So number one, to what extent can people benefit from mortgages? So we have a lot of deregulation in this industry during the Babangida's era from 1992 to 96, when you have a lot of mortgage institutions, but many of them went under because even the cost of financing mortgages was more than 2 digits. So how can people not have that kind of deficit? Then two, the cost of raw materials towards building, the cost of the bag of cement is very high. So I think we have development to use local products, but again, because of our taste for imported items, those models that were developed by the Nigerian Building Research Agency that are relatively priced, then people can assess that. Then the third one that is very critical to our development effort in Nigeria and in Africa in particular is this horizontal housing development models where everybody wants to build their house, raise fences like correctional centers where they can take ownership. On the other hand, in those developed environments, you have what you call vertical housing development models. When they build high-rise, people have access to 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 2 bedroom. Then once you get a mortgage, you're able to pay over a period of time. So that's, though it has a cultural dimension, but these are some of the issues that we must deal with to be able to tackle the issues of housing deficit in Nigeria.
Okay. We will be right back. Don't go anywhere. This particular discussion and our in-house analyst is not going anywhere. This is still SOUQ Pulse. Stay there.
Lateef Jakande. Born Lateef Kayode Jakande in the Ekbetedo area of Lagos Island, Lagos State, on July 1929. He studied at the Lagos Public School at Enowa, Lagos Island, then at Bonham Memorial Methodist School, Port Harcourt, King's College, enrolled at Ilesha Grammar School, where he edited a literary paper called The Quarterly Mirror. Jakande began a career in journalism in 1949 with a daily service and joined the Nigerian Tribune in 1953. The owner, Chief Obafemi Awolowo, appointed Jakonde editor-in-chief of the Tribune in 1956. Jakonde established John West Publications in 1975 after leaving Tribune and began to publish the Lagos News. He served as the first president of the Newspaper Proprietors Association of Nigeria, NPAN. Jakonde ran for election as executive governor of Lagos State in 1979 on the Unity Party of Nigeria platform. His administration was effective and open and implemented the cardinal policies of his party. He introduced housing and educational programs targeting the poor, building new neighborhood primary and secondary schools, and providing free primary and secondary education. He gave poor people's children education, and many of them are now very prominent in the society today. Jakonde established the Lagos State University and constructed over 30,000 housing units. After the military takeover in 1983, Jakonde was charged, prosecuted, and convicted of treason and later pardoned. He served as Minister of Works under the Sani Abacha military regime. He died in Lagos on February 11, 2021. Lateef Jakonde was the first civilian governor of Lagos State. Lateef Kayode Jakonde, SOUQ Enlightenment.
Yes, welcome back to SOUQ Pulse. We're here and we're discussing recent policies in Asia, China to be precise, and we're looking at their inroad into resurrection of their real estate industry. It wasn't dead, but it was just going all the way down. And they've taken a full, bold step, and we're all seeing where that is leading them to. We're bringing it back home, and we're looking at the housing deficit in Africa. Not just our parent country, but in Africa. So Mr. Sam is still here with us. Like I promised you, he's not going anywhere. So sir, give me a few seconds. Let me read out some statistics that is not too favorable to us here in Africa. Now, Nigeria, as of 2019, this is CBN publication. We're not looking at money right now. Housing deficit, 22 million units. As of 2023, 28 million units. Now, Ghana, 2.6 million units. That's for a population of around 28 million people. For Kenya, 2 million units, a population of 45 to 52 million people. For Uganda, 2 million units. For South Africa, 2.5 million units. That's a population of about 58 million people. And for Ethiopia, 1.8 million units. Now, these are deficits. These are people that needs homes. Now, for these units, it could be 4, 5, 6, no matter how big their families are. But with this, they are telling us that, okay, good, we will have covered up to, the housing should have gone around the population, even those that might not have, then good and fine, they can rent. But now, this is not where we are heading to. We are looking at the money. The proposed budget or money to get this done for our country in 2023 was 21 trillion. Now, as of 2023, the dollar was 600 and something in the parallel market, 500 and something in CBN. As we speak now, that has done ×2 in the parallel market. Which means if we are still looking at that figure, we should be looking at something close to 50 trillion. Is this the job? Is this the job of the federal government to provide this fund?
I think it's the job of the federal government to provide the enabling environment. Okay. Not necessarily providing all the units based on the deficit statistic that you just rolled out. You have real estate developers who are international, that are used to building satellite cities. So the government can underwrite some of those big companies that can develop satellite cities, which people will eventually buy off from those development, real estate development companies.
Okay, let me interject you. You just spoke about developing cities. Let me give a typical example. There is this particular, I'll call it a mini town, a mini settlement, but it's not that mini. It's a highbrow area, somewhere in Abuja, Nigeria, called Gwarimpa. This was part of the project. Government came in and individuals and developers came and developed that place with government policy and approval. So I now get to ask, African states, Nigeria inclusive, why did they stop at that?
No, the point is that even when you have those development models, are they people friendly to the extent that people can afford those mortgages? Those are the critical conversation that we must have. So if you develop estate where you are selling 100 million for a unit of house based on the rate of inflation and foreign exchange, who are those people that can afford to buy? So those housing model must be people friendly, it must be people centered. So when you have a government in 4 years in this country from 1979 to 1983 was able to provide over 30,000 units of social houses in Lagos. And then if you have successive governments across the 36 states or whatever, having an average of 10,000 units in the last, say, 40 years.
Every year.
Every year. And late Ghani had a model when he campaigned to become a president at the point that if he was given an opportunity, he will have to build about 10,000 units in each state of the federation. And by the end of this 4 years tenure, he will have built X number of houses. And he demonstrated how much it would cost at that particular point in time, the source of his materials, even the design, and all that. Because
and
it was equality.
The houses were going to be affordable.
Yeah, affordable. And that's what Jaconde of blessed memory, may God rest his soul, did for Lagos. And those houses are still standing. There are a lot of people who may not have had houses in Lagos, but that 30,000 units, over 30,000 units that he built, and even the spaces that he developed are still there. And people are even, Lagos State government is remodeling some of those estates. So the point is, government must have a commitment. The housing development must be people friendly. You don't build in isolation of what the people can afford. So the Gwarimpa that you mentioned in Abuja, the kind of houses there are not affordable.
At a point in time,
yes.
Let's go back to the Gwarimpa case. At a point in time, they had areas that had mass housing where low-income people could really come in and buy, whether directly or through mortgage. But with time, those particular ones stopped. So I don't know if those units stopped, and they now went back to those for the upper class set of people. Now, that leads me to where I'm going to. How can we say, if we are providing housing, that we have everyone covered? Why am I saying this? Most developers, let me take for example now, also in Nigeria, let's go to Lagos. Most developers in estates, they are not developing for the middle class or the lower class. They are developing units for not just the very upper class. They are developing estates for the very upper class. How can we get others covered?
The government cannot meet the housing needs of everyone, but reasonably, once we have social housing schemes where people can partner with government to provide low and medium housing units, then the deficit can be reduced minimally. But the challenge even the real estate developer have in our environment is that they go to the banks to get money for those developments, and you are taking money at a 2-digit rate of over 26%. How can you recoup your investment? That's the challenge. So they focus on where they think that they can make return on their investment because they are businessmen. So the government has a responsibility, as it were, to find a way to encourage other developers by reducing the interest paid on the loans, particularly from the perspective of finding a way to see how we can get a single-digit loan for the real estate sector that will be able to pull people into social housing development. If we don't do that, then I think it's just a child's play.
Okay, now let's get more personal and call names at this point in time. Sometime last year, the current Vice President of Nigeria, Shettima, in a meeting, he brought up this particular statistics of Nigeria needing 21 trillion to cover the housing deficit. Now I'm asking, is it possible, since government know that this is what we want, let's follow the example set by China. China is telling the banks, give them the loan. Okay, now in turn, reduce what you're holding as reserve. So we are not coming to hold you responsible if your reserve is not up to what we say it should be. Reduce it to this particular amount. And also take this as an addition. Now give them the loan. Since the government have come to say, we need this X amount to be able to get to this particular place, can we now say, okay, government, why not choose the financial houses you want, developers, not people that intend to buy now, developers. Choose a particular place where you want developers to be able to go and assess loan and put the money there. Let developer be the one at risk. If he doesn't develop, you know who to hold. Is it possible to follow that route?
Yeah, I think the challenge here, number one, is the government need to find a way to give a policy direction for the Federal Mortgage Bank that has a regulatory framework to supervise savings and loan, what you call...
Must it be mortgage bank?
No,
the China policy didn't just hold mortgage banks.
I'm taking it from one perspective.
Okay.
There are idle funds in terms of people contributions that are domiciled with the Federal Mortgage Bank. The government needs to do a due diligence on that particular fund. What is the level of contribution that was made over the years that is domiciled with the Federal Mortgage Bank? Two, to what extent can government recapitalize the savings and loan institutions, the ones that are responsible for mortgage development?
Okay.
Then we get a bit nearer. Then they should go back to the Nigerian Building Development Agency that has some prototype development. How much will it cost developers to build XYZ? Can the government underwrite the mortgage institutions to provide certain categories of house, particularly 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and there were prototypes that were developed by Fashola, the former Minister for Works. Okay. But the number of those units cannot really go run. So if we have the will, I think we can come nearer to the 21
let
trillion.
me ask you, when you say government on the right, can you explain that?
Yeah, when I say government on the right, just the same policy framework that China did. This is your reserve. This is the level of capitalization you have. You're able to provide 5,000 units of houses, loan for SYZ. As a government, whatever loans that you give out, whatever borrowings you take from other financial sector, we got you, if we use the straight language, we got you covered. So underwriting means the government will say XYZ, let them have this facility. If there's any default, we absorb that default before those repayments are made. So that's one core area. okay?
Okay.
Then we must find a way. There are a lot of government abandoned projects all over the place, in my view, that can be converted to social housing. So government should find a way to see, rather than looking for blanket buyers of their cronies, use advisedly, to buy those. Why don't we try to convert those houses, give those houses to the Federal Mortgage Bank and the mortgage institutions to...
Why mortgage institutions? They are banks.
No,
if you give it to them, they will still sell.
It's part of the financial sector.
So
there's a relationship between the core
developers?
commercial bank. No, the developers...
What about developers?
The developers are part of the value chain in the real estate sector. So once that ecosystem is well rejigged, then developers will have access to low interest loan for development, mortgage institutions, savings and loan, even cooperative and building societies will have access to that single digit loan that can help to assist to reduce the deficit that you just highlighted. So if you just make a blanket statement about 21 trillion to provide about 20 to 22 million housing deficit, but if you have a phased development model, it's okay, within 5 years, I will guarantee that I will produce 5,000 units of low-income house. Just leave the high end for the nouveau rich.
When you say I guarantee, who is I? Government?
No, government.
Developers?
No, government. Government guarantees development. Because
Who is building?
Yes, in building those houses.
Who is building?
Developers, mortgage institutions.
Why should mortgage institutions build?
No, they have relationship with developers and people contributing. So they have to have a direct supervision of those things,
okay,
so that they can secure.
You're saying the mortgage institutions should supervise.
Yes, the mortgage institutions equally have
supervise.
Yes, supervise.
That
Some
I
are
agree.
building society.
Why
they can
should
build estates.
Why? Why should the mortgage institution build? That's the
No,
question.
mortgage institution is part of the real estate development ecosystem. So they are called building societies. People develop estate. It be 20,000 units of estates.
Okay.
Financed by mortgage institution.
Yes.
They have a real estate sector.
Now you're using the words I am looking forward to. Mortgage institutions should finance.
Yes, when I mean mortgage institutions, you are looking at it in a generic form. When you say mortgage institutions, there are people within that real estate sector. You have developers.
Okay.
You have people who finance.
Okay.
You have people who partner with mortgage. You have building societies.
Okay.
What in some cases you call mortgage banks here.
Okay.
Who have within the framework of the organization.
Okay. Is it possible that you also add other banks? Let's not
Yeah,
limit
what I'm
it to
saying
mortgage,
is get it
mortgage
clearly.
banks. Yes.
When I say
not
banks,
just me. Tell them.
No,
Because
what
they are the ones we are talking
the
to.
point I'm making is that some of those mortgage institutions will have relationship with commercial banks,
Okay.
development banks.
Okay.
That's why I just use mortgage institutions. So none of the groups within that financial service sector can operate in isolation.
Okay.
So they must work in harmony in terms of how they can get funding. And the challenge here is the interest rate component. The cost of fund is very high. And when the cost of fund is very high, you go into the same market, you can't take money from depositors at a high rate and you lend at a lower rate. So there will be a mismatch between the deposit and the liabilities of the bank. And once there's a mismatch, there will be a run on the bank. So the lending portfolio must be determined by the rate at which you get funding into the financial institution. So to be able to reconcile...
Can't the government, if the government decides to pull funds down, can't the government determine the lending rate?
Yes, the government has to make a provision for that because the banking are in business.
Yes, they are in business. I agree with you.
Yeah.
But right
So
now,
that's why I use the word underwriting.
Meet.
I use the word advisedly. Underwriting means that the government will say, Bank A, if you give part of your prudential guideline, a percentage of your lending ratios, which the central bank has a responsibility for. XY percentage of your lending should go into the mortgage sector. That policy is there. But then if you do lending to mortgage institutions, building societies, real estate developers, we will underwrite those loans. So once that provision is there, then this housing deficit that you're talking about will be reduced minimally to a very large extent.
Okay, so let me take you somewhere else. During the COVID era, although we still have some small part of it rearing its ugly head, during the major COVID era, China built a massive hospital in a matter of days, if you remember, in a matter of days, and every material they used were either prefabricated or made right there in China. Now, they were able to do that because those materials are theirs. Now, you talked about the institute, the Builders Institute here in Nigeria. We are looking at policies that are coming from Asia and making things happen. Policies that are not just policies, but following up on those specific policies of government down to the premier, down to the head of the People's Bank of China. Everyone is on ground making sure that this happens and this industry thrives. What is difficult in Africa to look at our own materials in building instead of depending on still major part of these imported materials? How can we say, okay, institute, show us what you have? You spoke on it a bit, but you didn't really. How can we say, institute, by policy, show us what you have? Developers, this is our model. If you follow this model, you get A, Z, B form of loan.
Yeah, that's the point. The point here is that we have the policy framework. But more often than not, those policy framework changes from one administration to the other. So we will have a continuity in government where there is a public policy statement on a particular sector. This is the direction, and once the government is focused and deliberate and intentional about a particular policy statement, then this is where we want to go. We have a housing deficit of 22 million. As a government, I want to annually build 20,000 units of houses. It looks small. But then if you do that in 4 years.
That's 80,000.
Yes. Then you use the models developed by your institution that is cheaper. If I recall, one of the demonstrations they made some years back, but inflation will have taken that. They were talking about using mold with some grasses, like prefab that you have, the type of models that you have in Germany to build, and the costing to take a standard 3-bedroom and a 2-bedroom and a 1-bedroom, the average in terms of the higher house at that particular point in time was about 3-point-something million. But with the rate of inflation, that may be 2. But then if you can recalibrate that process, even with inflation, if you have the range of, say, 4 million to 10 million for 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom, with those kind of models, you should be able to provide reasonable housing scheme, because even the federal government has acquired land through state government across the states. So those lands are existing. Then you do these models, you build them, then let mortgage institutions provide lending for those who can afford those houses. And I'm sure if you make an opportunity for 10 million Naira houses, I'm sure people are able to even pay them, even within the 30 to 35 years mortgage regime that is a global best practice in terms of repayment for housing.
Okay, thank you very much. You've not just been a good analyst. Did I pull you down much? No. Yes. Now we are looking at making sure things work. And Mr. Sam has not just brought this particular chicken home to roast. We need to look at ourselves in the face, just like we do here on SOUQ News, and do programming positively. If we can't look at our neighbor or look at those on the other side and see what they are doing well and better at it, or at least copy, then we have a problem. So, sir, in just 2 sentences, please, can you give us your policy statement on ways of getting out of this issue of housing deficit, looking at what others have done?
We're not in the public service space, but the advisory that we can talk about here is that the government must make a deliberate attempt to see how she can reduce the housing deficit. And the plan, you have agencies of government that have building models, find a way to improve on the real estate development sector, improve on the ecosystem, find a way to reduce the 2-digit loan to 1-digit loan, find a way to compel the Federal Mortgage Bank to see how the deposits that were made by contributors over the years into that institutions reevaluated, a due process, looking at those contributions and see how we can improve. Jacques Condé did it in this same country. This government can do it once they are deliberate about those policy options.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sam. It's been my pleasure having you on SOUQ Pulse today. There is no need of adding anything. He has said it all. We need to grow, and Nigeria will grow. If you are the stumbling block, we don't have an issue. We'll grow without you. We'll be back again on Monday. Remember, this is still SOUQ Pulse. Follow us on our social media handles and join the conversation there. It's been nice having you. My name is John Rogers Chooks. Have a nice weekend. Bye.